There's a quiet moment most people don't talk about. It doesn't come with betrayal or dramatic endings. It arrives slowly, almost invisibly. You notice you're always the one initiating. You stop texting first, just to see what happens. And nothing happens. You go silent, and the silence stretches. In that space, an uncomfortable realization forms. Maybe no one is thinking about you the way you thought they were. Maybe no one is watching as closely as you imagined. Maybe no one cares in the constant, attentive way you once believed. That realization feels cold at first, but it changes everything. Most people move through life with an invisible assumption that others are paying attention to them, evaluating them, considering them. Behavioral psychology offers a simpler explanation. Human beings are cognitively self-focused by design. The brain is wired for self-preservation, for monitoring status, threats, and rewards. Your mind centers you because it must. It filters the world through your survival, but everyone else's brain is doing the same thing. The spotlight effect, a well-documented cognitive bias, causes you to overestimate how much others notice and think about you. You are the protagonist of your internal narrative, but in their narrative, they are. When that illusion dissolves, it feels personal. It feels like rejection, but often it's simply reality recalibrating. In relationships, this illusion intensifies. Attachment theory explains why. If you learned early that connection equals safety, your nervous system became attuned to relational cues. You learned to monitor tone shifts, delayed responses, subtle distance. You became hyper-aware because awareness once protected you. And unconsciously, you assumed others were scanning you with the same intensity. But they weren't. Avoidant individuals protect autonomy by creating emotional distance. Anxiously attached individuals protect connection by pursuing reassurance. Secure individuals engage without obsession. When you expect someone to prioritize your emotional state, you may be projecting your attachment pattern onto them. The pain isn't always that they don't care. It's that they don't care in the same way, or with the same urgency, or without conditions. That realization unsettles your identity because part of you tied your value to being emotionally central in someone else's world. From an evolutionary perspective, belonging once meant survival. To be excluded from the tribe was dangerous. Your brain still reacts to social indifference, as if it signals threat. When someone doesn't prioritize you, the amygdala activates. Stress hormones rise. Your body tightens, as if something essential is being withdrawn. You look for fault because your nervous system wants to restore security. But often nothing catastrophic occurred. The other person is simply absorbed in their own concerns, their own fears, their own survival loops. When you finally understand this, it feels like abandonment. But neurologically, it's a correction in perceived social importance. There's also a power dynamic embedded in attention. Attention functions like currency. The person seeking it often feels lower in the hierarchy, while the one withholding it appears higher. Not necessarily because they are superior, but because scarcity increases perceived value. Intermittent reinforcement, a principle from behavioral psychology, explains why inconsistency creates stronger attachment than stability. When someone responds unpredictably, dopamine spikes more intensely than when affection is constant. Your brain becomes conditioned to chase the next reward. Slot machines operate on this mechanism. So do many unstable relationships. You weren't irrational for feeling attached. Your reward system was being trained. When you realize no one is consistently investing in you the way you hoped, what collapses is not just expectation, but the dopamine-driven fantasy of guaranteed emotional return. This realization often exposes a deeper pattern. You may have been outsourcing your sense of importance. As children, attention equals safety. Approval equals belonging. Over time, your brain pairs validation with worth. Neuroscience shows that social rejection activates the same neural circuits as physical pain. Being ignored genuinely hurts because your brain processes it as injury. So, when you feel that no one cares as much as you do, the pain is real. But once the illusion breaks, something else becomes possible. You stop performing for an imaginary audience. You stop curating every message, every response, every pause. The constant self-monitoring begins to fade because the perceived observers disappear. Imagine your mind as a theater stage. For years, you believed the seats were filled, that every action was being evaluated. Then one day, the lights come up, and you see empty chairs. At first, it feels humiliating, as if your efforts were wasted. But then another emotion quietly emerges. Relief. If no one is scrutinizing you as intensely as you thought, you are freer than you realized. Freedom, however, rarely feels empowering at first. It feels lonely, because it removes the illusion of constant relational validation. Cognitive dissonance surfaces here. You want independence, yet you also want to matter deeply to someone. Those two desires can conflict. To resolve that tension, you text more. You explain more, you give more. But overinvestment often reduces perceived value because human perception equates scarcity with worth. This is not about manipulation. It is about behavioral economics applied to relationships. When something is constantly available without requirement, it becomes background noise. When it is chosen deliberately, it gains weight. Realizing no one automatically centers you forces you to choose whether you will center yourself. Your brain operates on predictive coding. It constantly anticipates how others will respond and adjusts when predictions fail. The day you realize no one cares as much as you expected is a prediction error. It requires updating your internal model of relationships. That update feels painful because it challenges identity. Perhaps you believed being thoughtful guaranteed reciprocity. Perhaps you assumed emotional labor would be mirrored. But reciprocity depends on many variables. Attachment style, emotional capacity, perceived alternatives, self-understanding. This doesn't make you cynical. It makes you observant. There are principles that clarify this shift. Attention follows self. People prioritize what stabilizes their own emotional state. Inconsistency strengthens attachment more than consistency, which is why mixed signals can feel intoxicating. Empathy is unevenly distributed. Expecting others to process emotions as deeply as you do creates imbalance. Status, perception, shapes behavior. When you withdraw and nothing moves, that absence is information, not condemnation. When you integrate these principles, you begin to observe rather than chase. You look at patterns instead of promises. Does this person initiate? Do they follow through? Do they engage consistently without pressure? If not, the answer isn't to increase effort. It's to accept evidence. When you reduce illusion, clarity increases. Some people step forward when you step back. Others fade. Both outcomes teach you about alignment. The power shift that follows is quiet. It isn't about detachment or dominance. It's about regulated indifference. You understand that care is voluntary. Mutual investment cannot be forced. When you stop trying to be unforgettable, you become more grounded. When you stop assuming constant evaluation, social anxiety decreases. When you stop centering others in your thoughts, cognitive energy returns to you. Neurologically, your prefrontal cortex regains influence over emotional reactivity. You respond with deliberation rather than urgency. The day you realize no one cares about you in the constant, consuming way you imagined is not the day you become insignificant. It is the day you stop living inside projection. You see that everyone is absorbed in their own narrative, their own insecurities, their own fears. You were never meant to be the center of their world, just as they were never meant to be the center of yours. This realization doesn't make you colder. It makes you clearer. You invest where effort is mutual. You step back where interest is absent. You stop confusing intensity with depth and attention with love. What replaces the illusion is not isolation. It is. So you are no longer waiting to be chosen in order to feel stable. You choose where to place your energy. You accept patterns without distorting them to protect fantasy. And in that acceptance, your nervous system quiets. The world may not suddenly care more, but you care differently. You move with awareness instead of assumption. And in that subtle shift, everything changes.